Last week, we took a journey back to a time when a young cinephile from Phoenix, Arizona ventured west on Interstate Highway 10 to Los Angeles. He came for the comedy, he stayed for the suffering, and he found that he had something in him that had to come out. By hand, that young cinephile from Phoenix, Arizona, he built the fortress of ultimate darkness. He built the podcast WatchThis with RickRamos. He watched films and he drank. And he drank. And he drank. And he spoke into the night until his AM radio voice went hoarse. And then I joined him. And we agreed. And we disagreed. And we agreed to disagree. Last week, we started 10 years ago. This week, we began in 2017 with the death of Chuck Berry.
Everybody has these, I don't know, anybody who doesn't have a passion, anybody who doesn't have something that they care about and they strive to understand or to better understand or to get a better handle on. I don't understand those people. I mean, I get it. They exist. You go to work, you do the job, you get your paycheck, you go on vacation, and that's it. But there's so much in this world that is enchanting and makes life worth living. So when you find those things, and oftentimes with film grabs a hold of so many different aspects of our life, and I think that's what makes it I think that's what gives it the power that it has. I'm glad that you're bringing up Chuck Berry, because I don't know how many years it's been. Has it been? Must have been 6-7 years now that he passed?
The episode that you did was in March of 2017. So we had just done the Logan episode.
Mm-hmm.
We did part 2 of Man versus Nature.
Yeah.
So episode number 125 is Remembering Chuck Berry.
That was one of those sitting in the fortress in the dark. I had Hail Hail Rock and Roll playing on the video screen, on the television screen, muted, and I would remember the first time that I saw the film, and it was I knew who Chuck Berry was. I loved the music, but I was only 13 maybe, and this was a film that was airing on the Independent Film Channel, which was a channel back in the day which was an actual independent film channel. It wasn't like Nickelodeon at this point, where it's just reruns of Everybody Loves Raymond and 2.5 Men and whatever other shit that they're doing just to survive as a network. No, it was there was a show, there was a channel. Do you remember it? It was in California. I had only heard about it, and I've seen a documentary on it. It was some cable station when you were a kid, and they showed Costa Graves Z. They showed Michael Cimino's original cut for Heaven's Gate, and they showed a number of truly independent. It was called the Z Channel or something like that. Do you remember this?
No, and I didn't have cable. My friend, a couple of my friends had cable. I didn't have cable when I was small. I mean, I didn't have cable at all, but I didn't really start like watching cable stuff until I was a little bit closer to adolescence. So,
well, that was the kind of thing.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the documentary, and I'll forward you a link or whatever. But it was amazing, because there was the building of a culture cinephiles. Now, L.A. had something like that because you had repertory theaters, you had revival houses. The American Cinematheque didn't exist at that point, but you still had the New Beverly, you had the Lamley theaters, and like one of the things that I miss the most about Los Angeles is the wealth of foreign documentary, independent, underground, and just fucking weird movies that get played on a regular basis. Whether it was the New Beverly or the New Art on Santa Monica Boulevard, or I talked about watching 44-inch chess there. I talked about riding my bike from my place in Koreatown because I had just gotten the DUI. I had to ride my bike from my place to Santa Monica in order to see Terry Gilliam's Tideland. So, and that's an uphill ride. You don't even realize it until you actually get on it. That's a fucking uphill ride. But I did that, and when I moved to Pasadena or South Pasadena, I had the Lamley theaters that the Pasadena Playhouse, Lamley Pasadena Playhouse, which was just this wealth of so many different types of documentaries. I saw, oh my God, I saw the Dolomite movie there. I saw the Eddie Murphy Dolomite movie before it came out on Netflix there. I think I saw a couple of Terrence Malick films there. I saw, the point of it is that it's you had a wealth, and
yeah. When was the Rialto open at that time, or was it already closed?
The Rialto was closed at that time. The last thing that I saw there, I think, was either Big Trouble in Little China, and then I saw something else, but the sound was so bad, so garbled that it was fucked up. So I think when I left South Pasadena, the Rialto was still shuttered, and it broke my heart because I would walk from my place to the Vons to pick up groceries. I would just walk over there, grab a sandwich or something, and come back. And to walk past this great theater that was just sitting there, I hadn't thought about the Rialto in fucking years. You're reminding me of something that it was. Every time that I walked past it, it broke my heart because I knew what a great theater it was.
And we all have those.
Yeah, we do. We do have those. I think if I were living in LA right now, I would have a hard time walking past the Cinerama Dome. Because it's still there, right? It's still there?
I don't even fucking know because I haven't driven by there in such a long... Because Amoeba is now somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So I haven't even been to the new Amoeba. It's like... This is truly what we're doing here is like going back and living in the past. And some of these things we haven't even revisited, like the present time, because it's ghosts, man.
But it's all the makeup of what we do. I mean, I mentioned to you that when I started doing Watch This, and then you came aboard, I think within 9 months of my beginning it, maybe 9 or 10 months. Within that first year, you were on board. First as a guest, and then I took the chance. And we're going to get into how this came to be, because the first episode on this was just the formation of the show, the purpose of the show, what the idea was, and what it meant to both me and you. This episode, I think, will be a little bit more focused on what it is we actually did in those 7 or 8 years that I was living in LA, doing the show from LA. But I had originally started to talk about, you brought up the Chuck Berry thing, which is an incredible memory for me because what it is that when you find something that triggers a passion, that passion is set off like a wildfire and starts to consume everything in your life. So it affects the things that you read, the music that you listen to, the films that you watch. One branch leads to another leaf that you start to. You start to gain this understanding of what the art is what's possible within the art. And like I said, I had known who Chuck Berry was, but to see the ego and the, in some ways, the sacrifice of talent for out of bitterness and anger. And what's fascinating about that movie is that it tells you so much about Chuck Berry without telling you anything at all, because he's so guarded throughout it. I mean, he starts to open up at points, but he opens up in such a way that he hints at who he is without you knowing fully who he is, because he doesn't want that. And
it's a persona instead of a person.
But has at a certain point, has he sacrificed whoever he was to become the persona? That's the thing. And we talked about it in the Elvis Michael Jackson episode, where you have people that are famous for so much of their life that they're no longer shackled by the reality of this world, because they have everybody telling them how great they are, the magic of what they do. Everybody's calling you, either the Prince of Pop or the King E. You got people that are faking getting beaten up by your fake karate. There's all kinds of little shit there that fame brings with it, that you have to wonder how much of the psyche of the person involved is sacrificed in order to attain this goal. You really start to wonder how real they continue to be. And with Chuck Berry, that's what that was. So I recorded that episode about, I've never been able to record an episode about somebody that I admire immediately following their passing or whatever specific event in their life. Paul Mooney took me about a month and a half. George Carlin took me a while. And Chuck Berry was the same thing. And I remember just sitting there in the dark, the images playing, what light was in the room was created by that television set. It was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm drinking Jameson, and I'm just thinking about who the man was and the beauty of it, and progressively getting drunker as I was wont to do back in those days. And I'm not adverse to going back to on occasion, but I know with his passing, whether I, even having not known the man, or there was never a time when our paths crossed, it takes a little something from you. The passing of your heroes, of course, it hits you from the perspective of where you're at in your life, your age, your mortality. But it's also that understanding, that greater understanding of knowing another great artist is gone, and I don't know of anybody that's ever going to replace them. I feel that way about when Kurosawa died, when Mifune died, and I was in my 20s then. But I know I'm looking down the horizon at Scorsese, Coppola, Spielberg, Paul Schrader, James Ellroy. We've lost a lot of people, and these are the pillars of our personal foundation. You and I have talked about race and culture as a factor in our persona and who we are, and you and I have talked about how whatever this is, whatever this brown thing is, whatever this Mexican American Chicano thing is, it's only a small part of defining who I am. I'm sitting in my room right now and I'm looking at a bookshelf. On one side I have a stack of, I guess, social commentary books, with the top shelf being Christopher Hitchens, Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, and Hunter S. Thompson. On the other shelf, I'm looking at history of comedy, W.C. Fields, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, 4 different books on Richard Pryor, 3 different books on Bill Hicks. I mean, this is the foundation of my life. I know you're sitting in your old room right now, and I can only imagine what the walls and the desks and the ceilings possibly say about who you are. You know, you are a very artistic and decorative person, and everything around there is going to scream you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I am able to maintain basically an office space at my mom's, and which fortunately isn't far from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And so the spaces that I share with Leslie are basically collaborative, but at the same time they scream her. So plants,
animals.
Yes, well, animals come first. So animals and plants. In that case, I'm one of the decorative, as I said last week, her decorative hermit. Yes, her menagerie, plants, things brought back from wherever, and then my books and my things, and but it's cool to be able to, now that we'll come back to this in terms of when we had to part ways and start doing this remotely. So it's cool to have the inspiration of whatever is around you, and that can just really bolster the creativity of having a conversation, because it's the space, it's the ambiance. But in the same way, to go back before we go forward, or to go forward, it's like these things are like, it's like fucking these old shuttered theaters. You know what I mean? These are the decorative aspects and the meaningful aspects of our geography and of our lives and of our biographies. And it's like, you know, at one point these Rialtos of our past were living things that we were part of. Then they get shuttered, and that means something. In the same way, you know, Donald Sutherland just died. He may or may not be a cinematic hero to any one of us, or he is to someone. But whatever the impact of Donald Sutherland on one's personal cinematic journey or history or whatever, that's still one of those landmarks that you're like, now that is gone, right? And part of what we do, I think, is to not have it happen where you're driving along or you're walking along or whatever you're doing, and you have these moments when there's a building to your left, and then all of a sudden one Saturday it's gone, and you say, what was there? Or if you remember what was there, it's kind of like it's there's something sad about it, because it's like it being there made it to where you no longer paid attention to it. It just blended into the background, and now you think about it more because it's not there. So there is that. After Chuck Berry, we went into Errol Morris, the documentarian. So we did The Fog of War, we did The Unknown Known, Standard Operating Procedure, The Thin Blue Line, Brief History of Time, Heaven's Gate. We did a couple episodes on him, so 126 and 127.
Not Heaven's Gate.
Again,
Gates of Heaven. What was it called?
Gates of Heaven. No. Heaven's Gate is what you said was on that Z channel.
Yeah.
Gates of Heaven. Yeah. Then we 128, and all this is on Libsyn.
Mhm.
So watch this with rickramos.libsyn.com. This is the archive. This is any kind of contributions that you give to us help us keep the lights on here, but also helps us keep this this record of what we've done. So that at any time, without a paywall, any of you can go back and listen to this old shit. 128, episode 128, we did Mad Max. We did the series.
Mhm.
So, we just now, not too long ago, watched Furiosa, recorded Furiosa, released Furiosa. So from 2017, when we started that, we've just put the capstone on that now in 2024 with that. So we did the whole series in episode 128. Then we got into a Vietnam. We started to do series, so we did the Vietnam War, Apocalypse Now, episode 129. We did Platoon and Casualties of War, episode 130. Born on the 4th of July and the Deer Hunter. The Killing Fields and Heaven and Earth. Full Metal Jacket. You went on to do Smokey and the Bandit.
Mm-hmm.
Then episode 135 we did, lo and behold, we did Cinema Memories. So we back then continued to go back further and further to talk about the Tower Records, the Warehouse, things that even then we were nostalgic about. Obviously we were nostalgic about them then, but it's just stacks and stacks of memory, like stacks and stacks of videos in a book on a shelf, or books and or videos and DVDs, CDs, records, vinyls, wax fucking cylinders, whatever we have on our shelves here as we record this. Cinema Memories, that's what we're doing now. That was episode 135, but that's a different version of it because it's a different year, it's a different day. Then we got into wrestling. Episode 136, primarily Beyond the Mat, the wrestler, but also the resurrection of
Jake the
Snake. And what we were talking about before we started recording is that we hinted at it in that episode. We started talking about one Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
And we were describing Donald Trump as a heel, a villain in wrestling. And we were talking about him as a villain and the performative aspects of the politics surrounding him. 2017, he won in 16, and his shadow still is cast on us now.
Yeah.
The wrestling heel, it goes so well with his persona. It goes so well.
Yeah.
His brand, it goes so well with the way that these right-wing media outlets kind of stand aside like Mean Gene Okerlund and just let him, when they're not actually fucking promoting him. The Bobby Heenans of Fox News, without the brain, can continue to prop him up, hype him up, and he can do these promos, and then wrapped in that even further is like this aspect of that kayfabe, where it's like the understanding that this shit is fake, but the idea is to maintain the illusion, and so we are fair and balanced. Yeah, right. So we saw that. We saw, and this was early on in there's so much that's happened since with Donald Trump, but there's also stuff that's happened since with Vince McMahon. Mired in scandal, hush money, sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Funk has died since we recorded that episode, and he was prominent in Beyond the Mat. You came back with 80s Action with Mike Black,
Mm-hmm.
which we've been looking at this year as well. We did the Godfather trilogy. Episode 138. We're still in 2017. That was a big one, a big episode. We did the death penalty.
Earl Morris. We watched a Herzog film on Netflix for that, I think.
We did Dead Man Walking.
Dead Man
we did
Walking.
Into the Abyss. Yeah.
Mhm.
We did Executioner's Song. Sam Shepard died. So we looked at that. You did an episode on what would have been Robert Mitchum's 100th birthday.
That was a lot of fun. Oh man, your heroes. Yeah.
We did Sebastian Younger, the journalist. We did 2 documentaries, Your Strep Went Core Gall. You did Crown Heights. Harry Dean Stanton died.
You still never got to see Lucky, did you?
You know what? I don't think I did.
You should see
because
Lucky. Yeah.
We should do it.
Yeah.
We did Fight Club episode 145. And this is one that would be interesting to go back to because, as we were saying last week, it's kind of like this idea of it goes back into the masculinity box or whatever.
It would be really interesting to go into Fight Club as a post and pre-Trump film. Because, I mean, there is the possibility of this being a pre-Trump period. But it rings radically different in 2024 than it did in 2017 when we were at the beginning of that whole period of intense masculinity and, of all things, politics. I mean, I think it's, you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and there were you and I can both remember, me probably better than you, but we can both remember to a degree the level of diplomacy and adhering to the role of a Reagan-era presidency, which the Republicans have held up for so long, and now we have this, which it has become WWF. It has. When you have a presidential candidate who has to tell the other presidential candidate to just shut up, that's an amazing thing on television. Would you shut up? Wow. I don't know what I was watching. The debates are tonight, correct? Today's Thursday, right? Or is this Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Okay, so the debates are tomorrow night. And they're doing a build-up of all these clips of the last debate, Trump in different episodes of grandstanding and speaking to his core. And it's when you watch that shit, you really see how disturbing it is in comparison to a Reagan era. And I'm not a fan of Reagan. I think Reagan. I can remember the time when Reagan was the devil. I remember the old. You remember the old Bill Hicks joke? Ronald 6 letters, Wilson 6 letters, Reagan 6 letters.
Oh yeah,
you remember that? I mean,
yeah, I mean that was a thing. The Rastafarians are used to jump on that too. Yeah, the 6 letters. It was. When the Rastafarians would talk about the Armageddon, the way they describe Armageddon, and yeah, Reagan at one point was seen as the devil. To others, he was seen as obviously like dignified, presidential, and the representative of the Grand Old Party. But now, those people are just, Trump calls them rhinos, Republicans in name only, because now MAGA has taken the party and moved it away from just the principles of like, okay, small government, all of that, trickle down economics, all that bullshit, social conservatism, fighting communism, blah 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 blah, to no, I am the party, I am your retribution, I am your vengeance, I am Trump.
Fuck.
So it has completely gone into a different, in wrestling they had those eras. It was like the golden era, the attitude era, the whatever the fuck era, right? Yeah. This is definitely, it is more of that shift into these villains that are still at once like cartoonish, but also like willing to go further and further into performative like levels of abuse. Yeah. And then at one point there was in wrestling this added like there was more of a sexual element, and then people degradation and people having to like get on your knees and so there is definitely that element to it. So to go back to go back to Fight Club, it would be interesting to look at it from a perspective of, yes, those political parallels, but also to think of Fight Club as different from when it first came out and how it hit when it first was released, and the questions about masculinity for a particular, and this is separate from the book, but from the book into the film, for a generation of men, or for men of a certain age, younger men who were looking to represent themselves in the world as physical beings who would use fighting as a way of like resistance to their jobs, and all this other shit, to exert themselves in that way. But then now, like, okay, through Charlottesville and that kind of perspective of these young angry men in the street, or these Proud Boys or whatever, to now from our perspective, which is not to say old, but more from a middle age, or more from a potentially even at this point post midlife crisis point of view, which is like, how does one exert oneself in the world if you're going to say, well, what is masculinity to me? Am I going to represent that? How do I represent that in the world? And it's not through fucking fighting, you know what I mean? It's a different perspective. From there, you did Jackie Chan, we did Blade Runner. We did an episode 148 of John Carpenter's Halloween and the horror genre. Mm-hmm. So it was like one of these times when I would, this might have already been, I don't know if at that point, I feel like you were already out of K-Town and you had already moved to Pasadena. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long you were there.
How long was I in K-Town or Pasadena? K-Town,
how long were you?
Well, K-Town, I was in there for about, oh God. In that apartment, I was there for about 11 and a half years. But I had been...
I don't even know if I ever...
What's that?
I don't even know if I ever recorded it at your K-Town apartment. Actually.
No, I don't think you ever did. We just hung out there and watched movies there and then went and got either coffee or pizza.
Yeah.
That's all we ever did at that place. And then, or we would go from that spot over to the Egyptian or whatever other theater that we needed to go to see the shit that we wanted to see. The Beverly. I don't know if you ever went to the Beverly with me, but Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
So then I moved to South Pasadena. I was living in the back house of a comic friend of mine. Um, and I think I was there for a little over 3 years before the shit hit. And I bounced May of 2020. So I was in Pasadena from about 2017 to May of 2020, and I've been out here. I haven't seen you physically, face to face.
Yeah, we're getting
in over 4
years.
Yeah. So we're gonna get to that, but yeah.
So I mean, this was like talking about. This is the epitome of what I think the cinephile experience is. One who's doing a podcast talking about film, sitting at your friend's house, and there's a park across.
Not even a house, a little tiny room that is filled with like 1,500 DVDs.
Yeah,
that had to be intimidating. That had to be something that you said, "Wow, this guy's either really dedicated or really fucked up, or both."
No, because I mean, I think it's like, look, like we've spent, people like us have spent so much time in rooms full of shelves full of things.
Yeah.
Whether it's books or DVDs or CDs or tapes or whatever. So it's kind of like, there's something cozy about it. There's something like familiar, even if it's not, it's one of those things where it's like you go to somebody's house and you go to their shelf because you want to see what they have on there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to know this person through their actions and through their words, but also through what fucking books do they own? You don't have any books? Goodbye. Not necessarily, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like, because it's like, well, do you have stories? Do you have, there is an element to like, and this is beyond just materialistic fucking type of shit where it's kind of like, well, do you have the latest fucking iPhone, or do you have the fucking this or that, or these, do you have these stupid fucking easy shoes, or what the fuck do you have? It's like, no, it might be like, oh, that's interesting, that fucking broken coffee mug. And it's like, oh, that broken coffee mug, or, you know, that watch, this is my father's watch. I carried it. My father's friend carried it in his ass. You know what I mean? Like, from Vietnam.
The only place you could hide something like that without the...
And it was Christopher Walken. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it wasn't, I mean, and I was used to your addiction to...
Go ahead and say whatever the fuck you want to say. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was already used to that. And I have my version of that with books. And then luckily I have an enabler. My partner is an enabler so that if we're somewhere and then my eye starts twitching and she's like, you live in the material realm, just buy the fucking books.
Yeah.
And so there it is. But to sit and record, and we're talking about John Carpenter, and we're talking Halloween and the horror genre, and it's dark, it's night, and it was almost as if, I think it was for that episode, almost as if on cue you hear the howl, when it was like, oh shit, the children of the night, what music they make. It was a fucking coyote, and it was creepy as fuck, but it was funny and cool, and it was like, we looked at each other and it was almost like we were fucking little kids, and like little kids in the theater again, and fucking like, oh shit, like it brought everything back. I might as well have had a bag full of fucking trick-or-treat candy, you know, ready to dump it out onto the floor and start looking for razor blades and needles, hoping to find one and be like, here it is. There's a fucking pervert killer in our midst. It was one of those moments. Fun episode 148. Then we went into, speaking of perverts in our midst, we went 149 right into Harvey Weinstein. That scandal broke, Me Too, that was then, and you kind of subtitled the that episode "Not a New Story," which obviously that goes all the way
Mm-hmm.
fucking back
To the
to the
formation of the medium itself, way
yeah
before. I mean, the casting couch of the '60s and '70s, all the way back to Judy Garland and what they did to her. We talked a little bit about that during the MGM years, and even into the early days of the silent film era. And I'm not talking about just the scandals of the Roscoe Arbuckles and the other shit that went down. I mean, whenever somebody has a dream, you're gonna have a group that are going to be willing to go farther to achieve that. I fucked up last night, and I didn't turn my phone off like I usually do before bed. And you start going down these rabbit holes of these 2-minute Facebook, YouTube videos, and they started talking about Halle Berry and how she made the rounds of the casting couch back in the 90s. And part of you is like, you don't want to believe that. You want to believe that talent actually rises, but at the same time you're
right
human, and you know the level of predatory action that exists in this world. So regardless of whether somebody is talented or unique, brings something special to that screen or that set, that it's going to be taken advantage of. And what I think is really interesting, because you're bringing up all this, I went back through the episodes myself, but you definitely went through with a finer tooth comb than I did. And from what I'm hearing from you now, I don't want to pat us on the back, but we were on top of a lot of things, and when we talked about them, we always talked. It would have been very easy to go in to do an episode and shit on the women that were with Harvey Weinstein and are now raising hell against him. It would have been real easy to get on that male platform of, um, these bitches should keep their mouths shut because there's that aspect of it. But then there's also that aspect of jumping on that Me Too bandwagon, and you and me saying, "Oh, we're masculine feminists," or whatever the fuck. I think what we're doing, and what I strive to do, and what I think you strive to do on this show, is to examine a situation with a balanced eye, to look at the times in which these events occurred, and comment on them as such. To be able to look at all this shit objectively and say, this is what was going on at that time, whether right or wrong, mostly wrong, almost exclusively wrong. This was what it was, and it's always been that way. And it's not something that is exclusive to the entertainment industry. It's across the board. It's anywhere where people have power. Now, I worked at a club that was ran by a woman whose sexual appetite was notorious and was talked about throughout my time there as old stories. Now, I'm not saying that it was right that she wasn't labeled she wasn't painted with the same brush as a Harvey Weinstein, but what it really goes to show you is the availability of opportunity based on power. And a lot of these people took advantage of it in that manner. Harvey Weinstein was not a unique situation. And I think those episodes were balanced. I think they were investigative as much as we were able to do for a podcast that focuses on something that's not necessarily that. And I think they were fair. And the more we talk about it and the more I go back to the episodes and listen to some of the things, the conversations that we've had, I'm more and more proud of what we've been able to accomplish over these 10 years. I think it's,
I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
we should be proud. I mean,
Yeah.
just to have done it. And obviously, like, this is not an investigative, like, as you said, this is not an investigative podcast. This is not a journalistic podcast. This is not what you just said about, you described, like, watching some clips about Halle Berry. We're not saying that they're true. We're not saying any of that. You're just saying that that's what you were watching, and it led you down this, like, spiral of these thoughts of, like, fuck, like, how disheartening, and how much does it challenge our idea of meritocracy and etc. The Harvey Weinstein Me Too kind of movement and this moment was something that was affecting what we talk about. So much has happened even since then, in Hollywood and outside of Hollywood. I mean, the Epstein scandal breaking, and then later his arrest and his death.
His suicide. His suicide.
Some people would say not.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the conspiracy theorists are going to fucking say what they're going to say.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
But and the point is, he died in the cell.
Yeah, with the cameras conveniently off and guards conveniently absent. Sometimes conspiracy speaks louder than
than truth.
Yeah.
Then fucking Occam Fraser, the simplest explanation. I don't know how he died. I'm not going to even and I'm not going to really, like, pursue the fucking, like, the ultimate answer to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know where fucking Bin Laden is. I don't know where Jimmy Hoffa is. I don't know who killed JFK. I don't know how fucking Harvey Weinstein died. All I know is that it was episode 149. You know what I mean? Like, and since then, I mean, the Kevin Spacey videos, the Charlie Sheen fucking meltdown, his outing as the alleged abuser of Corey Haim, the fucking whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard fiasco and trial, surviving R. Kelly, leaving Neverland, the currently unfolding Diddy scandal, Cuba Gooding Jr. being, like, caught up in that, on and on and on. So this is not. There are plenty of, like, jumping off points that we could do from that, because it's kind of like it wasn't a new story then, and it's not a new story now.
No.
After that, Gilbert Gottfried died. Episode 150. You did an episode on that.
Yeah, that was heartfelt. That was sometimes you don't realize the influence a person has on you, and the documentary, he had just passed, and the documentary had been made. And I called up a buddy of mine who was a fellow comic, doesn't really do it anymore. I wasn't really doing it as much as I was doing it, but we sat there and we connected and we talked and we reminisced about our time at the Comedy Store through this other comic's journey, and it was really one of the best nights of movie watching that I've ever had, because it you know, you simply love when it hits home. You love when you're watching a movie And so much of what is happening on the screen reflects what you've gone through in some different form or some different type of experience. It's almost like cover songs. It's like I've lived that life, and to see somebody else do it and do it on the level that they did it, it's a little bit inspiring. It's a little bit sad. It's hopeful, but it's also depressing in a lot of ways, and that's what that movie was. If you get a chance, go back to that episode, because that was one of the few times that I was able to watch something and then come home almost immediately afterwards, set up the mic, and then just start talking about what I had just seen. So it was still fresh. It was really, there wasn't time to sit down and go over my thoughts and alter them to what I was trying to do. It was probably the most heartfelt episode that I've done, besides maybe the 44-inch chest episode. I think I laid it down on that one. It was very personal.
He had died, or was he still alive when it was made, or it was I don't remember when he did.
I think he passed. He passed away, and it was a shock. He had just passed away. Nobody knew that he was sick. I don't think anybody knew he was sick. So it came as kind of a shock. And this movie was released almost immediately after. That's how I remember it. He was not alive during the making of this film. No, I mean, not that. He wasn't alive during the release of the film. But I think the intention was that the film was made, he would do press for it, and then he died almost immediately before the release. So I don't even know if they addressed his death in the movie. I don't remember that. You looked up?
It looks like, I just looked it up. It looks like he was alive. I just think that again, time has just and the way we remember things, because so it looks like, so you recorded that episode in 2017 and he died in 22, so he would have been alive. And I think as we remember it, it seems like, we did this episode, because typically it's like,
he didn't die in 2022. He died when I was in LA.
He didn't?
No, he died when I was in LA. It says he died in 2022. Okay. I don't see.
What I saw. Yeah.
If that's the case, then my memory is all fucked up, because I don't remember that. I remember him passing when I was in LA. I remember, because this is the thing, that you have a core group of friends that do it, that tell jokes, and they end up calling each other, and we start talking about there were a couple of comics that I called when Mooney died, when Greg Giraldo died. All of these guys were like, oh shit. And like with Mooney, I knew Mooney. I had talked to him. I had met him. We had actual conversations. Greg Giraldo, I never met. Patrice O'Neill, I never met. But when those guys died, I not with Patrice, because I didn't really discover him till years after, but with Greg Giraldo, I remember talking to comic friends going, wow, that guy was fucking great. What happened? And then you find out it's the drugs, and you're like, oh shit, we heard this story before. And, this is just, it's another cover song. It really just something that's already happened, and now you're just doing a different version of it. This is Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff, or whatever. It's not, someone's always knocking on heaven's door, and it ain't necessarily Bob Dylan, So I remember Gilbert Gottfried dying a lot earlier than that. Now, I'm not going to contest it, because motherfucker died when the motherfucker died. But I don't think it was 2022.
No conspiracy?
No conspiracy there, no.
In the write-up that you did for the episode, it doesn't mention his death. So,
okay.
So,
that's, it's entirely possible.
I mean, it just goes to, that memory thing, you know what I mean? And it's, print the legend
Always print the legend.
at this point. Always print the legend. So it's kind of like, not necessarily fucking alternative facts of Fox News and Donald Trump and Kellyanne Conway, but sometimes it's like, well, there is truth in the dramatic, mythic, spiritual, romantic sense, and there is fact in the dry scientific sense.
Yeah.
So from there, we went into a series on the devil in
that
cinema.
That was fun, yeah.
So,
well, you know what's fun about
The
that?
Exorcist.
Yeah, we did The Exorcist. We did. What's fun about that is that you take a look at a character like the devil, which is, you know, iconic in our, not even just American culture, but fucking human culture. The devil is such a prominent factor in our lives, whether you have a belief system or not, or you know, a traditional religious belief system or not. The devil is going to play a part in the psyche. And to watch the devil on screen as portrayed by Pacino, Robert De Niro, the devil taking over a little white girl. The devil's a cold motherfucker, right? So that's
right.
I still love that joke. Walter Houston, so many people inhabiting who the devil is. When you start breaking it down, you start understanding, I don't want to say the power of the devil, but the power of the devil as an image, as a character. And every once in a while, we'll do an episode where I think I'm bringing to it this understanding of what the film is and what it means to the culture. But as you and I talk about it, I learn things from your interpretation and your historical context of what the research that, and I'm talking about life research. I'm not specifically talking about the research that you do for an episode. I'm talking about life research, which is, you know, the lived in understanding of what these things mean to us.
My interactions with the devil.
Yeah, well, you know, the crossroads.
You and the devil walking side by side.
You tune the guitar, you can't lie that, you know. But when we start going into it, it surprises me how much bigger the story is, which is kind of a cunty, egotistical thing to say, because basically what I'm saying is I know everything. How the fuck is this new? But the truth is,
I can't believe I forgot this.
Yeah. I forgot that I didn't even know this. That's part of it too. But like when you really start talking about it, you start digging deeper into your own psyche, and then you start to understand what it truly means and what it stands for, and what you understand that something like the devil in the bigger picture. So movies like The Devil and Daniel Webster, The Omen, Angel Heart, The Devil's Advocate, all of these movies take on a different meaning and a different power, with The Exorcist being probably the culmination of all of it, being the biggest and the most frightening, the most the one that if you have faith, you question it the most. I think that's what I enjoy about those talks, is that I'm slapped in the face with an understanding that I had never known existed. And that makes for a certain level of growth in you as a person. I don't know if that's the way you feel about it, but that's definitely the way that's what I take from some of those conversations.
Well, it's always enlightening to. There's what you learn, and there's what you learn by passing on what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And how much do you know something is how much can you relay it to someone else. And so in that series, which was, they were episodes 151, 152, 154. We talk about primarily the Exorcist, some depictions in the Passion of the Christ, Last Temptation, the Greatest Story Ever Told, Rosemary's Baby, The Ninth Gate, The Omen. We describe the history of the devil as a concept, the development of these figures, Satan, and how they move from like a mythological sense into established religion and on into culture, through popular culture, through cinema, through art, but also into like the Church of Satan. So then you have like literature, and you have like a Luciferian figure who is like about rebellion, and John Milton, kind of like this romantic devil. And it's something that I'd like to get into more. And there's some documentaries on Satanism and the Church of Satan that ultimately, like, I think for me would be fun to do, to really get into that and like see where we're at with that.
I'd love to do that. Yeah,
we should at some point. But it's like, it's not just the movies, but it's also like, what's the background and where does 666 come from? And it's not Reagan. And what does all that mean, aside from just kind of like, oh, this is one of the greatest villains in for sure the Western tradition, but just in the world at this point. So it was a fun exploration over 3 episodes to do that, and then there's potentially room to go back. In between there, we did Coco, Pixar's Coco. Before even that, Charles Manson died in that point, and then so through the Rosemary's Baby, we touched on some connections because that's the Polanski connection and stuff like that. But we did Pixar's Coco, and then ultimately we ended 2017 with a look at Star Wars, the saga. So some big moments there. There was a lot of stuff there. We started with actually episode 4 of The Devil, Witches of Eastwick, Devil and Daniel Webster, Devil's Advocate, Needful Things, and Angel Heart. If you haven't seen Needful Things, great performance by Max von Sydow. That was episode 156. That's how we started 2018. Go back and check that out.
Yeah,
we did a year. Yeah, we did a year in review, 2017. Then we went into the fucking blues.
Yeah.
So more of the devil. To really go into the blues as like a genre, a musical genre that you love, but also to look at some of those aspects of obviously the African influence, how the devil plays a part, some of the mythology surrounding some of these figures, like of course Robert Johnson, and how the blues affect popular culture and music in ways that we don't even realize, including we go into, I know at one point I was describing songs that we may not think of as having like the 12-bar blues structure, but they do. We did The Pimp in Cinema, episode 161.
That was fun.
We talked about Iceberg Slim, Portrait of a Pimp. You and I went to go see that. I don't know at what point we had gone to see that, but we saw that
that was one
in
of
a theater with the director, with you laughing,
and the subject's daughters,
right?
And
right,
and yeah, that was that was a great screening.
Yeah, I mean, to have people stare at us because Rick is
Rick.
LOL-ing, fucking at moments where this like West Side fucking liberal crowd is like, what the fuck? Why are these valet ushers fucking sitting here next to us? Um, Laughing at this movie. Who let them in?
Mm-hmm.
So Heidi Fleiss, Iceberg Slim, American Pimp. American Pimp is a great documentary that I don't really hear about.
I think it got buried.
It's
I think what happened. We talked a little bit about this. Is that while the Hughes brothers were making that film, HBO was producing a documentary called "Pimps Up, Hoes Down," which was more salacious and more gratuitous and less artistic than what the Hughes brothers did. It was the Hughes brothers really did approach the whole subject matter from a sociological standpoint. I it's hard to look at something like that and say that they're not endorsing it, but I don't feel that the Hughes brothers were endorsing the pimp lifestyle. I think they were doing what great documentarians do. They were going at it from a journalistic aspect, examining the culture and asking why it was such why it had such a power over the American culture, but black culture in general, African American black culture in general, specifically. I mean, and I think the film was a little bit too. With a film like that, you're not going to get a champion from either side. White people are going to look at it and be disgusted by what that is, and black people, I guess conservative black people, are going to be of the attitude that we just want to move away from this imagery where it appears that it's being celebrated. If you watch that movie again, I don't think the Hughes brothers are celebrating that shit. Do you get that sense?
I guess the pushback that I would have in against how you're describing it is that I don't necessarily that it's completely like journalistic, because primarily what they do is they interview pimps.
Yeah.
And they interview them, so they give them a platform to describe themselves as they like. And then they have clips of them moving through the night, moving through their respective realms with an amazing fucking like soundtrack. They capture and edit in all of these great, interesting, quotable lines coming from the pimps themselves. So they let basically the pimps kind of create their own mythology. Then they let the pimps basically counter the prevailing pop cultural portrayal of the pimp, which is as a clownish figure. So it's easy to criticize this documentary as being kind of, in a sense, pro-pimp, because the pimps are so fucking interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously they're capturing them at their most interesting because they're getting the best material and putting it in. And they're doing it in such a way that it's kind of like, you never forget what they are because they don't let you forget who and what they are. But you're not looking at aspects of like beating women that you're forcing to, or you're convincing or you're persuading or however you want to describe it to go have sex to make money to give to you. But you're allowing them to kind of make their case in a way that's very, I don't want to say appealing, but it's very entertaining. And through that entertainment, there is an appeal.
Yeah.
So
which makes it
I wouldn't describe that as journalistic.
Yeah. Okay, it's not journalistic, but here's the thing: is that if you go into a viewing with an like, I think pimps are disgusting human beings. I think that, before child molesters, they're probably child molesters and rapists and child molesters. Pimp is about the lowest form of human being that you can be. So when you watch this film, what I like about it is that it doesn't pass judgment. It presents them and it allows them to speak, and you hear their rap, you hear their bullshit and how they coerce a woman. they find the woman that they can get. They sink their vampire teeth into them, and they suck out that soul. And I think in the case, to show an opposite view would negate what is the ugliness of what they are. Yes, it's appealing, and yes, it's smooth, and there is a charisma to it. But if you're a reasonable person watching that shit and you're taken in by it, there's that moment of clarity where you snap into understanding. You're like, oh, wait a minute, this is a fucking pimp.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is a motherfucker who's going to take a wire coat hanger, heat that shit up, and beat a bitch with it. Or at least that's the common mythology of, Iceberg Slim, all Superfly, all that shit. I'm gonna put that bitch out on that street, and you're gonna give me my fucking money, So it's. I love the fact that it shows them for what they are, which is incredibly charismatic, powerful. That way with words and enticing somebody. It's a psychological game that you can watch play out, and as you hear it, you understand the methodology of what they do. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You can look at it and say, that's fucking evil. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize the power that they have and the abuse that certain men are willing to use against women, and specifically broken women. I think that's the power of the movie. Yes, it's appealing. Yes, you can learn the wrong lessons from it. But if you watch it with an understanding, if you go into it with an understanding of what selling flesh is, then you're going to understand it a little bit better. And that's something that Pimps Up, Hoes Down doesn't have. If you've ever seen that documentary, it's a completely different take on it. It's an outsider's view that is, it's glossy, I think, to a degree, although it's ugly because it's video, which the Hughes brothers are shooting on video too. I saw that in the theater. Did you see it in the theater?
No, I don't even know if I rented it or if I just saw it on sale somewhere and I think I bought it from Tower or something.
I saw it at the New Art. It played at the New Art.
Yeah, no, I just got the DVD and it was like right away. I mean, I am very drawn to language, and so if it's from and I say this in the Exorcist episode that we did on the devil, it'll be, let my cry come unto thee, you know what I mean? And that I hear that and it just, my ear perks up. And so from that, to pimps, you know what I mean? Now, some of you guys might be surprised by what I'm about to say and say, who is that lame who thinks he knows the game? And where did he learn to play? So right away I was taken. And there's so much quotable shit in there because these guys live and die by their silver forked tongues, right?
Yeah.
And to a degree that they say, oh, well, we don't use violence. If you're using violence, you're not pimping. You have to do it's all through what you say. And of course, they're pimping us when they say that because it's kind of like, sure.
Yeah.
But these are the rules of the game as they say. But it's an interesting episode and it's an interesting documentary, and so it was cool to go into that because it's kind of like, and it's not something that you're gonna like You don't see it a lot. So if you can go
No.
watch that film, watch the film, I recommend it, and make your own decisions about it. From there, we did episode 162 was Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And it was this kind of, it was a compare and contrast, but it was just the parallel lives of these 20th century popular culture icons. And they're, all the way from the beginnings up until their tragic deaths. And drugs, fame, warped reality, these mansion playgrounds. Strange episode, strange lives, but good episode. It was very interesting. Episode 162, Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson. We did episode 163. We did Unforgiven. We did the Eastwood version, and we did the Japanese remake,
which was fun because I had never seen that. I had heard about it. It was almost like a legend to me, whereas I knew there was a film that was based on Eastwood's film, which is a film that I love. I loved when it came out in '92. I loved it. I still love it. I think it's one of the most important films that I have watched in this lifetime of movie watching. And the idea that the Japanese would flip the cinematic history and pull from an American Western opposite of Hollywood pulling from Seven Samurai to make Magnificent Seven, or Italy would pull from Yojimbo to make Fistful of Dollars. This was, I thought it was like a really powerful and beautiful statement, and I saw the universal appeal of that story, and I think the Japanese film is brilliant. I love it, and I love Eastwood's film, so that's one that I'm going to have to sit down and make some time and watch again, because every once in a while you have to treat yourself. You got to treat yourself to something great. Yeah.
And obviously we're going to revisit that one, unless he outlives us all. Yeah. Once Clint Eastwood goes, we're going to have to we're going to have to do all of that stuff, because that's going to be a journey that we go down for that.
It's weird because Eastwood has been with us for so long. I mean, the man is 93 or 94 years old and has been a cultural presence since the mid-60s. So we're talking about 60 plus years of media, whether it be Rawhide in the early 60s, into the Italian films with Leone, into the Don Siegel relationship, into his taking the reins of his career as a director and producer, and creating this Eastwood, or at least shaping the Eastwood image based on what was created by Leone and Don Siegel. Yeah, that's going to be a hard one. That's going to be a hard episode to do. It's going to be rough.
From there, we went into gun control.
Yeah.
So obviously, this is still an issue that we deal with, is gun violence and gun things about guns in the United States. So there was, obviously we did Bowling for Columbine. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about murder by proxy. We talked about Waco, the rules of engagement, about the ATF and the Branch Davidians and the controversy surrounding that in the late 90s, or actually in the like mid 90s. And so a lot of that stuff also has when we talk about Trump's shadow, there are seeds of that in some of these events, seeds of what we're seeing now in some of these events, because, Alex Jones who was now, he he was a Trump supporter. He made all of these claims about Sandy Hook, which he was sued for. But if we go back before the 9/11 stuff, before the 9/11 conspiracy stuff, it was really what people saw in Waco when the federal government came in and raided that place. That there was Ruby Ridge, there was Waco. Waco really kind of sparked something in certain corners of the American patriot movement and American psyche, and to include Timothy McVeigh, who would go on to do the Oklahoma City attack. So you get to see some of this stuff happen, like in our discussion in the episode, but also in these documentaries, or specifically in the documentary on Waco Rules of Engagement, where that would propel someone like an Alex Jones. I don't remember exactly how deeply we go into that. I'm sure I mentioned it, but there are things that seem like maybe it's like, well, what does that have to do with Donald Trump? You just have people who have certain sympathies. Yeah. It's the seeds, and they go through. So it's interesting, and Michael Moore obviously looking at some of these things and moving forward. After that, episodes 165 and 166 were I misspeak. Episode 165 was about Leonard Peltier, John Trudell, and the American Indian movement.
So we look fascinating.
We look at the incident at Oglala. We look at which is a documentary. We look at the fictionalized, dramatized version of that film by the same director, Michael Apted, which is Thunderheart. With Val Kilmer, Sam Shepard, Graham Greene. We look at the documentary Trudell, about John Trudell, and so we look at Native American issues in those films. Then 166, we did Pulp Fiction, which at that time in 2018 was 24 years old.
Wow!
At this point, it's 30. So we went back and looked at Pulp Fiction. That's episode 166. It's interesting because we looked at how important it was, but we also looked at some of the areas from which Tarantino straight out just stole and changed shit. Mm-hmm. And to really see, it's kind of, it touches on this idea of like, in the way a hip hop artist will draw and pull samples from something else and change them to make something new, the way a collagist will cut something out and put it, but this is all, and I made this argument or this kind of point about Tarantino in another episode, which it'll come to me later, maybe when we cross that bridge, but it's also like, this is before the internet. Not when we did the episode, but I mean, like, internet wasn't what it is now when Pulp Fiction came out. Yeah. So the idea of like, did Tarantino go into this saying, I'm going to steal this and no one's ever going to find out because the internet does not exist as we will know it 30 years from now? I don't think so. I think at that point it's kind of like you have this film nerd who's like, this is really cool. I'm gonna change this, and if I change it enough, it's mine. And I'm putting it in a different context in the postmodern sense, and because I'm putting it in a different context, I'm changing it, and therefore it's something else. And I do believe that there is validity to that argument. And I myself have projects that have been in the works for a long time that people may see, people may never see, that are, simmering on the back burner. and I try to make as much time for as I can with adulting and all that balance. But where yes, I also am drawing on certain things and putting them in a different context. The difference is that I intend to source those things so that in my context, those things will be seen as something different. But at the same time, there will be a footnote or something that will allow people to know this came from that. If you source something, then it's like, hey, I drew from this, and I used it in this different context. Versus, I'm not letting you know anything. I'm just putting this out there. Ezekiel 25:17, the path of the righteous is beset on all sides. Well, is that where that comes from? Does that come from him? Is it actually Ezekiel 25:17? Is that actually a biblical verse? Listen to the episode and find out. 167. 168 was a survey of Native American cinema. So this is something that you're not going to hear very often. I'll just put it that way.
No,
a survey of Native American cinema. That's what we did. We looked at some of the most prominent films featuring Native Americans or about Native Americans, oftentimes not featuring Native Americans, featuring people basically in what you would call red face.
Yeah.
And how the portrayal of Native Americans, how it's evolved in Hollywood from Hollywood's inception till that time, which was in 2018. So, I mean, to include Dances and Wolves, we looked at this documentary called Real Injuns. Real as in like a movie reel, REEL. Injuns, INJUNS. And the documentary describes all that, so we kind of use that as like a foundation for our discussion, and we go through major cinematic moments and portrayals. So it was also very interesting and something that doesn't get talked about enough.
Well, it was important because it was very much an examination of the cinematic experience, because it's something that is typical of, I mean, red face is no different from yellow face or black face or any of the instances of people darkening up or whatever to play a role. And, you know, the constant argument even today is an actor should be allowed to portray whatever. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. I really, the episode and the discussion in the episode only made it a little bit more difficult because, like, how do you qualify a Val Kilmer who will claim a certain level of American Indian ancestry? A Johnny Depp for doing the same thing. Should that be allowed? Should it be? But if it's not allowed, and then you don't have the box office lead in order to sell a picture like that, then the subject itself doesn't get made. Are we better off for a Dances of Wolves existing, or would it be better if we just stopped doing this this white savior bullshit that that at the same time chastises the white man for his crimes and allows him to be the hero of somebody else's story? I still don't have an answer to that. I don't know if you do, but I don't think we came to it in that episode. What was interesting,
I mean,
what's that?
Yeah.
No, but what was interesting is being able to at least talk about the problem, talk about it as a very real element of Hollywood history. And hopefully in the future we will have a Native American presence on screen that will not be dependent on um, a white lead. Even in something as great as I thought Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, that wasn't necessarily about the the Oklahoma Indians who were being slowly murdered throughout the reservation. That was more about the Leonardo DiCaprio's character and his struggle with being used as a puppet by his uncle, played by Robert De Niro. I mean, it was, but without those two, you don't get a film made. So
Right.
what's the, I mean,
Yeah, you get a documentary. That's it.
yeah,
And
that's it.
that just goes straight to some channel. It goes straight to that Z channel that doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore.
Yeah.
That you worry about.
That barely existed then.
Yeah. I mean, if we had the answers to that, had we arrived at some answer, we would have used that answer for Dune.
Yeah.
For the 2 different Dune episodes that we would end up doing. And we didn't have those. I mean, who has that answer? I mean, in theater, you can do colorblind casting. So it's, you see a certain number of people per role that you're going to audition, and you just pick the one that works the best for that role. You can do that in theater, and it's not based on how you look. In film, there's so much that goes into the look, and that's traditionally how it's been. And so you can go to a certain audition, and if you've ever been to someone's audition or gone with someone to their audition or dropped them off or whatever, and you go with your friend and you drop her off or whatever, and then you peek inside, or you walk in, or you go to use the restroom or something, and they're sitting on these folding chairs in 2 rows against either side of the hallway are doppelgangers of your fucking friend.
Yeah.
And they're all there for the same part, and they're on some level they're all interchangeable, and that's how the industry views them. And so now, I mean, that's just one, but now you have a whole like ethnic group that you're just using interchangeably, and then it's like, well, dark skin, you're dark enough, your hair's dark enough. Okay, cool. Everyone else, fuck off. And so, I mean, it's to even look at that is something that, or the Bridgerton type of thing, where it's kind of like, I think Leslie was describing Bridgerton to me, but I was like, well, are they subverting, because that's like, they're subverting elements of appearance and race by putting these people in this time period in positions that they wouldn't have been in that time period. And so, and I was just like, I was asking, well, or it's kind of like in the Game of Thrones spinoff, they have black characters that play Targaryens. But in that world, are they like, is it a thing that they're black in that world? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or is it only in our world that we see that it's like, oh, they're doing this because we understand that this is now a subversion within the industry? And then at that point, is it like, if it's just one character, is it just like, well, kind of like Denzel Washington plays Macbeth in a film? Is it just because we want to see Denzel Washington play that part, or is it, oh, this is the black Macbeth, but no one's acknowledging that he's black? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It just becomes this thing where it's like, if we went to go see some small theater production of the Scottish play, and it's you have a woman playing Macbeth, and you can have, but playing it as a man.
Yeah.
Or if you go back in time and you see all the characters are actually men, but some of the men are playing women. So it's very strange, but it's
Well, we're living in
but
a
it's
time
also
where
interesting.
it's so. I think the thing is that it's been something that's been so stifled and not allowed to be talked about, not allowed to be dealt with. It was just a fact that Olivier or Orson Welles could put on the cork and play Othello. At this point, you cannot imagine a white actor playing a black character unless it's played for comic effect, and even then, it's problematic for some for some for some in the community.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of like, well, why aren't they? Why? How come we never saw Omar Sharif playing Othello? Because
Yeah.
Othello is from North Africa,
Mm-hmm.
so Othello could have had. I mean, obviously he's described as the way he's described in Othello, but in North Africa you can have a blonde person with blue eyes, or you can have a person with so-called black skin, and you have everything in between.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how come there are no like brown-skinned Moroccan people playing Othello that we're seeing?
But pardon the pun, but it is really a matter of black and white, where that's all people really understand, and that's all they want to understand. So part of the problem is the culture and the people who want to watch the movie. That's why in 2000 or in 2008, 2009, whatever the fuck it is, you can make a movie like Exodus and have all of these Egyptian leaders played by white actors, Christian Bale, Joel Edgerton, all of these, white actors playing Egyptian, and it might raise some hackles, but it's not going to affect the box office. Because a lot of people are just like, well, show me somebody of that pigmentation that could play that part, which might be true.
And sell those tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who could play those parts, but it's like, are they going to sell those tickets?
Are they going to sell the tickets? Yeah. You and I talked during the Thunderheart episode. As much as I like that movie and I like the story that's being told, if the whole film had shifted and centered on just Graham Greene's character, I would have been far more interested in that movie. He's a better actor, and it would have been a much more interesting take on the story. I think he's great in that movie, given very little to work with. And I think he's proven time and time again, especially with Dances with Wolves, that he's better than the material that he's given. We said the same thing about Wes Studi. Look, I think the biggest loss is understanding that great actors that had the potential to be bigger than what they were shackled by an audience's expectations and a studio's limited belief. Wes Studi should have been bigger. Woody Strode should have been bigger. There's so many actors and actresses that could have done more if they had just been given the opportunity to lead the charge. And it's just, look at how, I mean, it's scary to me. It's really disappointing to know. There's one part of me, there's the liberal that says, oh, this is unfair and this isn't right. But more telling and more and louder is the voice that says, all of the fucking movies that I missed out on because the studios weren't brave enough to fund something that could be really great. Whether that be a gay-inspired story or a story written and directed by women. A few years back, and maybe I'll get you to watch it one day and we can talk about it. Greta Gerwig, who did the Barbie film, which I hated. I fucking hated because it didn't go far enough. You and I have had that conversation off mic. but she did a movie called Lady Bird with Saoirse Ronan, I think, that young Irish actress, and Laurie Metcalf. And I thought it was fucking brilliant. I loved that film. I thought, because it was a real mother-daughter story. Now, you can watch it and really be pulled into it and later on say, well, granted, it's a white mother and daughter, and that only speaks to one, but, fucking baby steps, man. And, sometimes you got to take the wins where you can get them. And I think that film really delivers on a level that, it delivers on a level where you start to understand all of the other films that we've missed out on. And that's not to say that there wouldn't have been female-driven films that would have failed and failed badly. But think about how many male-oriented films that have done the same thing. A male lead, male writers, and men directors, that it's fucking embarrassing how bad the film is. So why would you limit it?
All of the straight to video, all the straight to fucking whatever, like, are all those.
Yeah.
Every failed film, however you describe that, is probably a male lead and a fucking male director, right?
Sure.
Because just by
numbers, by sheer numbers.
Virtue of the fact, yeah, right. So there's that.
Yeah, you think about it, it's like Spike Lee, maybe the most critically and commercially successful black filmmaker, and it pains me to know that Tyler Perry exceeds him in the commercial. But I'm talking about good films. I'm talking about real films, and I've seen a couple of the Tyler Perry films. They're just bad. I don't know. But the fact that Spike Lee has a great filmography. He's had some real clunkers. He's had some bad movies in that 40-year span of making movies since She's Gotta Have It up until, I don't even know what the last film was. The Five Bloods. Has it been that long? Has he not made a movie since the Five Bloods? Because that was like 4 years ago.
I don't know. I don't know where we're at with Spike Lee. I'm behind on a lot of directors, and he's one of them.
But the point is, think about how many movies didn't get made. His Joe Louis film that never got made, and Spike is close to 70 now. What are the chances that he's going to keep making movies? But Spike Lee was the only director out there for a while. Charles Burnett didn't get the voice. Bill Duke was left in the shadows. Melvin Van Peebles, he hit hard with Sweetback, but very few films after that. And
he also went on to do other. Yeah, he went into like stock market shit and all this other stuff.
All kinds of other shit. I mean, but it's like, at the end of the day, who loses? Yeah, the artist loses, but we, the audience, we lose because we don't see great films. We lose out on the films. And a lot of times the black films that we do get are either cartoonish or this weird kind of bad boy shit. Bad Boys for Life, Bad Boys Ride or Die, this fucking embarrassment of a series, with two actors that are, both, as much as I hate to say it, Will Smith has a level of talent that I can't be dismissive of. I don't like him, but I can't be dismissive of. And I've loved Martin Lawrence in certain films, namely Life. But I don't know, man. There's a part of me that just, it really wears on my soul knowing that, because I'm a selfish bastard. I just want good films. And to know that these films didn't get made because of the short-sightedness of the studios in not trusting that that an audience would flock to it.
And there's a possibility that they wouldn't flock to it.
Well, there is a possibility. There's always a possibility, but how many films have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, probably the two biggest names in action films? How many films have they made that didn't live up to expectations? Schwarzenegger, The Last Action Hero. Stallone, oh Jesus Christ, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. What the fuck? What, come on, man.
Yeah, which is that one where he has the Pacino haircut and he's a cop.
Oh, the Pacino haircut. Cobra? No.
Yeah, maybe Cobra.
Cobra.
Is it Cobra?
I don't know. Either Nighthawks or Cobra. No,
yeah,
Cobra.
See, we don't even know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like we prove our point.
We always prove our point.
Right. Even if we have to go back 10 years to fucking do it. We can leave everybody for this episode with this. It's like we can look back and we can say, this is the shit that we lost in the films that didn't get made, and that is true. These are the people that we're potentially going to lose, and the films that we're going to lose in the future because they're not going to get made, or these people are going to die. And we're getting older, and we're going to fucking die, and you're going to fucking die. Everybody you know is going to fucking die. And all these actors and all these directors that have died from when we started to now, and on and on and on. But we can also say, look, like, this is what we have. Like, this is what we did get. This is what we preserved. This is what's preserved in the record. This is what is out there. Go look for these films. Let us also let you know this is what's preserved in the record of our journey. Yeah. And some of you have been on for the whole of it, and some for partial. But this is in the record. And maybe, like I said last time, you're only listening to the Apple shit, and you can only go back so far. But no, you can go back, watch this with rickramos.libsyn.com. Libsyn is spelled Libsyn. Libsyn. You can go and you can find all our shit that we've done. There's going to be stuff that you're not aware of that you can dig in and you can say, oh shit, I didn't know that they did that. Well, that's what we're trying to remind ourselves and of you, the listener, what we did. We're going to continue this episode, just like last episode was dedicated to all of our listeners. Last one was for the listeners that had come from the very beginnings of the show. This one is for those of you who jumped in the middle or close to the beginning. If you want to help us keep the lights on, we know that you're trying to keep your own lights on. We get it. buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. You don't have to fucking give us the deed to your house. You don't have to sell us one of your children. You don't have to sell us your soul. You don't have to give us your devotion, admiration, or even respect. You don't have to give us anything. You don't even have to say, we don't even say, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. But you do lend us your ear. So we appreciate that. But if you want to give us a little bit more, even if it's $5, whatever the fuck it is, help us out so we can preserve the memory, so we can preserve the legacy, so we can preserve the archive, and we can keep the mic hot so that you have, at the very least, 2 assholes to listen to. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.